Good Saturday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for December the 2nd. Today we are reading together in Ezra chapter 4 and Ezra chapter 5. Hope that your Saturday has gone well. I appreciate you being patient with me as I try to get over a bit of some sickness over the last few days. Feeling better, I think, enough to be able to do a reading with us, with everyone today. So appreciate the prayers and the kindness that y'all have shown. While we've just been trying to get over a bit of sickness here in the Angel household, it is that time of the year. Just one of those things we have to deal with. But thanks so much again for taking some time to read along with me today. Let me get the text of Ezra chapter 4, and then we'll get into chapter 5 as well in our read today. A couple of shorter chapters, but I think they really do go hand in hand together in addressing some of the issues that the rebuilders of the temple are going to face as they undergo this big process, this rebuilding process of the temple and Jerusalem and such. Really beginning here in chapter 4, we're going to see the conflict beginning, but we're also going to see the conflict persist. They're just going to continually face opposition to their work in rebuilding the temple and rebuilding the city as well. So let's read here then, beginning in Ezra chapter 4 and verse number 1. Ezra chapter 4, verse number 1. When the enemies of Judah and Benjamin heard that the returned exiles were building a temple for Yahweh, the God of Israel, they approached Zerubbabel and the family heads and said to them, "Let us build with you, for we also worship your God and have been sacrificing to him since the time King Esarhaddon of Assyria brought us here." But Zerubbabel, Jeshua, and the other heads of Israel's families answered them, "You may have no part with us in building a house for our God, since we alone will build it for Yahweh, the God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, has commanded us." Then the people who were already in the land discouraged the people of Judah and made them afraid to build. They also bribed officials to act against them to frustrate their plans throughout the reign of King Cyrus of Persia and until the reign of King Darius of Persia. At the beginning of the reign of Ahasuerus, the people who were already in the land wrote an accusation against the residents of Judah and Jerusalem. During the time of the king Artaxerxes of Persia, Bishlam, Mithredath, Tabiel, and the rest of his colleagues wrote to King Artaxerxes. The letter was written in Aramaic and translated. Rehum, the king deputy, and Shimshai, the scribe, wrote a letter to King Artaxerxes concerning Israel as follows. From Rehum, the chief deputy, Shimshai, the scribe, and the rest of their colleagues, the judges and magistrates from Tripolis, Persia, Erech, Babylon, Susa, that is the people of Elam, and the rest of the peoples whom the great and illustrious Ashurbanipal deported and settled in the cities of Samaria and the region west of the Euphrates River. This is the text of the letter they sent him. To King Artaxerxes, from your servants, the men from the region west of the Euphrates River. Let it be known to the king that the Jews who came from you have returned to us at Jerusalem. They are rebuilding the temple, they are rebuilding the rebellious and evil city, finishing its walls and repairing its foundations. Let it be known to the king that if that city is rebuilt and its walls are finished, they will not pay tribute, duty, or land tax, and the royal revenue will suffer, since they have taken an oath of loyalty to the king. And since we have taken an oath of loyalty to the king, and it is not right for us to witness his dishonor, we have sent to inform the king that the search should be made in your predecessors' record books. In these record books, you will discover and verify that the city is a rebellious city, harmful to kings and provinces. There have been revolts in it since ancient times. That is why the city was destroyed. We advise the king that if the city is rebuilt, its walls are finished, you will not have any possession west of the Euphrates. Verse 17, the king, Ezra chapter 4, verse 17, the king sent a reply to his chief deputy Rehum, Shimshai the scribe, and the rest of the colleagues living in Samaria and elsewhere in the region west of the Euphrates River. Greetings. The letter you sent us has been translated and read in my presence. I issued a decree, and a search was conducted. It was discovered that this city has had uprisings against kings since ancient times, and there have been rebellions and revolts in it. Powerful kings have also ruled over Jerusalem and exercised authority over the whole region west of the Euphrates River, and tribute, duty, and land tax were paid to them. Therefore, issue an order for these men to stop, so that this city will not be rebuilt until a further decree has been pronounced by me. See that you do not neglect this matter. Otherwise, the damage will increase and the royal interest will suffer. As soon as the text of King Artaxerxes' letter was read to Rehum, Shimshai the scribe, and their colleagues, they immediately went to the Jews in Jerusalem and forcibly stopped them. Now the construction of God's house in Jerusalem had stopped and remained at a standstill until the second year of the reign of King Darius of Persia. But when the prophets Haggai and Zechariah, son of Iddo, prophesied to the Jews who were in Judah and Jerusalem in the name of the God of Israel who was over them, Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, and Jeshua, son of Jozadak, began to rebuild God's house in Jerusalem. The prophets of God were with them, helping them. At that time, Tatanai, the governor of the region west of the Euphrates River, Shethar-Bozenai, and their colleagues came to the Jews and asked, "Who gave you the order to rebuild this temple and finish this structure?" They also asked them, "What are the names of the workers who are constructing this building?" But God was watching over the Jewish elders. These men wouldn't stop until a report was sent to Darius, so that they could receive written instructions about this matter. This is the text of the letter that Tatanai, the governor of the region west of the Euphrates River, Shethar-Bozenai, and their colleagues, the officials of the region, sent to King Darius. They sent him a report written as follows. To King Darius, all greetings. Let it be known to the king that we went to the house of the great God of the province of Judah. It is being built with cut stones, and its beams are set in the walls. This work is being done diligently and succeeding through the people's efforts. So we questioned the elders and asked, "Who gave you the order to rebuild this temple and finish this structure?" We also asked them for their names, so that we could write down the names of their leaders for your information. This is the reply they gave us. We are the servants of the God of the heavens and earth, and we are rebuilding the temple that was built many years ago, which a great king of Israel built and finished. But since our ancestors angered the God of the heavens, he handed them over to King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon, the Chaldean, who destroyed this temple and deported the people to Babylon. However, in the first year of King Cyrus of Babylon, he issued a decree to rebuild the house of God. He also took from the temple in Babylon the gold and silver articles of God's house that Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the temple of Jerusalem, or the temple in Jerusalem, and carried them to the temple in Babylon. He released them from the temple in Babylon to a man named Sheshbazzar, the governor of by the appointment of King Cyrus. Cyrus told him, take these articles, put them in the temple in Jerusalem, and let the house of God be rebuilt on its original site. Then his name Sheshbazzar then this same Sheshbazzar came and laid the foundation of God's house in Jerusalem. It has been under construction from that time until now, but it has not been completed. So if it pleases the king, let a search of the royal archives in Babylon be conducted to see if it is true that a decree was issued by King Cyrus to rebuild the house of God in Jerusalem. Let the king's decision regarding this matter be sent to us. And that is Ezra chapter 4 and Ezra chapter 5. Ezra 4 and Ezra 5. So again, once we get to this text of chapter 4, we see the conflict beginning to flare up. These people who are the enemies of Judah and Benjamin, best I could tell, I think they would be the Samaritans of Jesus's day. These would have been individuals that would have been imported into the land of the 10 tribes, the 10 northern tribes, Samaria and surrounding Samaria. They would have intermarried with the few Jews that would have been there remaining in the land. They would have been people who had actually been taught by priests of God or supposed priests of God to learn how to worship Yahweh. Yet, whenever we go to 2 Kings chapter 17, and especially 2 Kings 17, beginning of verse 24, going throughout the rest of the chapter, but but specifically in verse 34, you see that they were not faithful to Yahweh, and they never were going to be faithful to Yahweh. Even until the time that 2 Kings was written, they were not faithful to Yahweh. So whenever they come to Zerubbabel and pose themselves as being Yahweh worshipers, in some ways that's true, but they were paganistic worshipers of Yahweh. They worship Yahweh in addition to all the other gods of the region. So these were not true Yahweh worshipers, which is why whenever they asked to participate in the rebuilding of the temple, Zerubbabel shuts that down and says, no, this isn't for you. You're not true worshipers of Yahweh. This is for us. We have been sent back here to do this. This is our task. We are going to be the ones to complete it. So those who are already in the land, again, best I can tell, the Samaritans of Jesus' day, their forefathers, they don't like this. They don't appreciate this. So they try to discourage people of the land. And eventually what they want to do is they want to send a letter to King Xerxes, who is also known as Ahasuerus. They send a letter to him in order to paint the picture as if this is a city that does not need to be rebuilt, because if it gets rebuilt, your range is going to be even more difficult, because it's known for its rebellion. Although I don't think any of that's really true. I mean, the only thing I think of is whenever it comes to Jerusalem, that whenever other kings came in and tried to overtake it, well, yeah, they rebelled at that point because they didn't want to be overtaken. Whenever they try to lay siege to it, they try to break those sieges, yes. But I think there's really a great deal of embellishing done here by these men, Bishlam, Mithridath, Tabiel. I think there's a lot of embellishment here, trying to make Jerusalem look as bad as it could be, so they might be able to halt this construction, basically out of spite. They're just mad that they're not allowed to participate in this, that they have no part in this. So they are going to pitch a fit right to the king and try to get it stopped by his edict. So King Xerxes ends up sending this back to ends up sending a letter back and says, you know what, it is discovered that the city has had uprisings against kings since ancient times, and they have been rebellious, and there has been revolts in it. Again, I'm still not understanding what exactly he's looking at, but nevertheless, he says that it needs to stop, but he leaves this loophole to where it can change according to a edict from me later on down the line. Well, that's all they needed. All these enemies needed was the word that they could stop it. So they immediately go to the Jews and they forcibly cause them to stop. And for 15 to 20 years, for 15 to 20 years after that, the construction on the temple was stopped, and it remained at a standstill. The text tells us that is until the second year of the reign of King Darius of Persia, because at this point, God sends word directly to the people through Haggai and through Zechariah, telling them to go ahead and get back to work again. And they do that. Zerubbabel and Zerubbabel and Jeshua get to work. They began rebuilding the temple of the house of God. The prophets who were with them were encouraging them and helping them along the way as well. So here's the next point of conflict. And honestly, it seems like this was an honest inquiry by this next person, Tatanai. He is the governor of the region west of the Euphrates River, and then he's got his friend Shethar Bozenai. They go to the Jews and they just ask. They ask what's going on. It doesn't seem like they have the same motives that the previous group of opponents did. For them, they're living at a time whenever there had been many revolts under the reign of Darius in the first couple of years that he had been in power. So they're on the lookout to be able to tell whether or not there's revolts that are brewing, so they can try to get out ahead of that and not get themselves in trouble. So I think that might be what they're thinking of here. Is this a revolt against Darius? Is this something we need to be wary of? Is this something that we need to get the king involved with, just again to keep things on the up and up? So whenever they go to the Jewish leaders, they ask for who gave you permission, who are the names of your workers, all these things. But this time, God doesn't allow them to be stopped. They wouldn't stop them until the report was sent to Darius. So they basically said, stay in a holding pattern for now. Keep doing whatever you're doing, but we're going to wait to hear from Darius. And if he gives you the okay, keep on doing it. But if he doesn't, then we're going to put a stop to it. And that seems to be the way this is working in this particular instance. So they end up sending this letter, Tatanai and Shethar Bozenai end up sending this letter to Darius and just ask him, who gave the order to rebuild. who asked them, basically gave a recap of what the discussion had been between, or from their point of view, to the elders of Israel. And then the elders of Israel replied to them the reality of the situation, that talked about how they are the servants of the God of the heavens and the earth, and they're rebuilding the temple that had been destroyed. Why had it been destroyed? Well, it had been destroyed because our fathers angered the God of the heavens. He handed them over to Nebuchadnezzar. They destroyed the temple, deported the people, but King Cyrus of Babylon and Persia, remember, he took over Babylon and took over the throne of Babylon, but he was a Persian. He issued the decree to rebuild the house of God. He also took from the temple of Babylon the gold. He talks about all the things that have been taken from the temple and now been given back to the Israelites. They've been given specifically to Sheth's Bazaar. Easy for me to say, right? And he had brought these things back so that we can rebuild the foundation of the temple and get it under construction. It's still under construction now, but it has not been completed at this time. So again, this is from the standpoint of Tatanai and his colleagues. If it pleased the king, let's figure out if that's the case or not. Let's figure out whether or not this is actually true, that they were sent here by the decree of King Cyrus. If they have, then cool. If not, we need to know that as well. So again, here in Ezra chapter 4 and chapter 5, we just see the conflict that is showing itself for the people as they're trying to do what God would have them to do. Of course, that's just a reality for us all, that whenever we're trying to do what's right before the Lord, there's always going to be things that are against us. The wicked influences of this world are going to be against us. But one thing that I do want to just mention is that the captivity was successful. What I mean by that? What I mean by that is the people were sent into captivity because they had become obstinate, because they had been totally engaged in sin. Sin was pervasive throughout the kingdom. Yet here we have the elders of the people giving an accurate representation of history. We have been here before. We served God, but our forefathers rejected God. They were disloyal to the covenant. God brought the curses upon them. But now we recognize that. This, to me, is the confession of sin, that this is why we were taken away from our homeland. And that's the point of punishment. The point of punishment is to get the evildoer to recognize what they have done and to change. And it seems like they're trying to do that here. They're trying to be dedicated to Yahweh. They're trying to do as he would have them to do. And you think about these texts and the texts of the Chronicles, all those texts were written and preserved for us to learn from the past, so that as we move forward, we don't make the same sort of mistakes. But if you have any questions or comments about this text, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. As we keep working throughout the text of Ezra and into Nehemiah, we're just going to continue to see more and more difficulties and conflicts arising to oppose the people of Israel in the work that they're doing. And we're going to see how they address them and keep learning some lessons from them as we go along. Thanks so much for taking some time to read along with me today on this Saturday. Hope that you have a great rest of your Saturday. May God bless you in all that you do, and hope we'll see you again in the morning as we read together from Ezra chapter 6. Take care, and God bless.